The Artist and the Old Table. Chapter 1. Minh's World of Creation. Minh was a passionate artist who lived in a small village surrounded by rolling hills and lush greenery. The world outside his cottage was serene and simple, but within the walls of his home, chaos reigned. His studio, filled with unfinished canvases, half-squeezed tubes of paint, and brushes worn from overuse, reflected the internal struggle he faced daily. For as long as he could remember, he had been obsessed with perfection. Every stroke of his brush was intended to create something magnificent, something that would earn him lasting recognition. But despite his success, Minh always felt an insatiable emptiness. Minh's mornings were defined by waking up to a cluttered mind, always full of ideas that never seemed to be enough. He would often skip meals, ignoring the pangs of hunger, choosing instead to keep painting and striving. His friends and family noticed his relentless drive, but Minh barely had time to connect with them. Success, he thought, was the key to happiness. If he could just finish this next painting, this next piece of work, then he would finally feel fulfilled. Despite his growing reputation as a talented artist, Minh felt constantly pursued by an invisible weight, anxiety that wrapped itself around his mind and heart. Whispering that the future was uncertain, every stroke he made on the canvas seemed to be a desperate attempt to secure something he was afraid of losing. Recognition, relevance, love. As the days and weeks passed, Minh became more isolated, his personal relationships suffered, and his health began to deteriorate. The stress of always striving for something greater caused him to lose sight of the very thing that had once fueled his passion, his love for the art itself. His paintings began to feel like a means to an end, rather than a reflection of his soul. Chapter 2. A Chance Encounter. One evening, with the sky painted in hues of purple and gold as the sun began its descent, Minh found himself sitting alone in his studio. His latest work, a landscape piece, sat untouched before him, the canvas staring back at him as if it too felt the weight of his indecision. He felt stifled. His mind was a whirlwind of unfinished thoughts, deadlines, and the pressures of perfection. Unable to stay in the studio any longer, Minh decided to step outside. He needed to clear his mind, even if just for a moment. He wandered aimlessly through the winding streets of the village, his feet moving without purpose. As he walked, the sound of the world around him, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of birds, the soft hum of the wind, began to feel strangely foreign. It was as if he had forgotten how to hear the rhythm of life. After a long walk, Minh found himself in front of a small, unassuming garden near the edge of the village. The garden was simple, just a few flower pots, a weathered bench, and an old wooden table. It was a peaceful place. Untouched by time, Minh felt a quiet pull toward it, as if something inside him was drawing him to this corner of the world. There, sitting at the old table, was an elderly woman. Her hands were gentle as they tended to the small pots of flowers scattered on the table. Her face was wrinkled but serene, and her eyes, despite their age, gleamed with a quiet peace. Minh had seen her in the village before, though they had never spoken. She exuded a presence that was both calming and profound, something Minh didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Chapter 3. The Tea. Minh hesitated, unsure of whether he should disturb her. He almost turned to leave, but something made him sit down on the nearby bench. The old woman turned her head and met his gaze. Her eyes softened, and she smiled gently at him. "Why do you look so troubled, my dear?" she asked. Minh let out a deep sigh, the kind that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. "I'm always thinking about the future," he confessed. "I'm always working, painting, striving for the next big achievement. But no matter how much I create, I never feel at peace. I'm afraid of failing or being forgotten. I can't seem to stop pushing forward." The old woman listened attentively, nodding with understanding. There was no judgment in her gaze, only quiet wisdom. She didn't respond immediately, instead reaching for a teapot beside her. She poured a cup of tea and handed it to Minh. "Drink this," she said gently. Minh took the cup without thinking, his hands trembling slightly. The tea was warm, and its aroma filled the air with a subtle sweetness. As he took his first sip, something unexpected happened. A wave of calm washed over him, as though the tea had the power to ease the storm within his mind. For the first time in years, his thoughts seemed to quiet down. "How does it taste?" the old woman asked. Minh looked up from the cup, his heart slower than it had been in a long time. "It's good," he said, his voice soft. "But, tell me, what should I do? I can't stop thinking about my work, my future." The old woman smiled, her eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "When you drank that tea, were you thinking about the next sip, or were you simply enjoying the one you had?" Minh paused, reflecting on her question. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't thinking about the next step. He wasn't consumed by the pressure of his career, the need to finish his work, or the fear of failure. He was simply present, experiencing the moment. "I was just enjoying it," Minh admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The old woman nodded and pointed at the flowers that swayed gently in the breeze. "Look at those flowers," she said softly. "They don't worry about tomorrow. They don't race to become something else. They live in the moment, simply growing and blooming." Minh's gaze followed her gesture. The flowers were simple and beautiful, and yet, they didn't seem to be striving for anything. They weren't worried about their future. They were just existing, being. "But what if the rain comes?" Minh asked. "What if they get washed away?" The old woman smiled gently. "Then, they will face the rain when it comes. But today, they are simply alive. The future is not ours to control. All we have is the present." A profound sense of peace settled within Minh's heart. He looked up at the sky, now glowing with the soft colors of the setting sun. The air felt fresher, the world seemed more vivid. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of anxiety pressing down on him. Chapter 4. A Shift in Perspective. That evening, as Minh made his way back to his studio, the old woman's words continued to echo in his mind. Life is not about constantly worrying about the future. It's about embracing the present moment. He had always believed that his worth was tied to his work, to his ability to create something great. But now, he understood that life wasn't just about achievement. It was about living in the moment, embracing the beauty of the present. The next day, Minh made a choice. He would change his approach to life. Instead of working himself to exhaustion, he would take time to be present, to enjoy the little moments. He decided to have lunch at the village cafe, instead of eating alone in his studio. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, and listened to the conversations of the villagers around him. He didn't think about his paintings, or his unfinished works. He simply enjoyed the meal. Later that day, Minh called his mother, just to hear her voice. In the past, he had always been too busy to connect with her. But now, he allowed himself to be fully present in the conversation, not thinking about his next deadline or what he had to do next. In the evening, instead of rushing back to his work, Minh opened the window of his studio. He watched the sunset, its colors painting the sky in a glorious display. The warmth of the evening breeze embraced him as he took a deep breath. He didn't need to rush. He was content simply being in that moment. The lesson learned from the story, The Artist and the Old Table, is 1. Happiness lies in the present moment. Minh, despite being a talented artist with a successful career, always felt empty and never at peace. He spent his life chasing after success and achievements, constantly worrying about the future and fearing failure. However, through his encounter with the elderly woman, Minh realized that happiness is not a destination but the moments we experience in the present. What matters is not always worrying about the future, but learning to enjoy what we have right now. 2. We can't control the future, but we can live fully in the present. The flowers in the garden do not worry about tomorrow. They simply live and bloom in the moment. Similarly, life doesn't always go according to the plans we set out. We can't control everything, but we can embrace what's happening right now. We have the power to be present. And that is where true peace and joy lie. 3. Happiness is not in the achievement, but in the process. Minh spent so much time focusing on the end goal, the final painting, that he missed the joy in the act of creating itself. He began to understand that happiness is not found in a completed task or a distant achievement, but in the process of doing, in each brush stroke, each step forward, and in the experience of creating. 4. Balance is the key to avoiding stress. Minh was so absorbed in his work that he forgot to take time to relax and enjoy the simpler things in life. When he began to take breaks, spend time with friends and family, and savor small pleasures like a cup of tea, he found that these moments helped him recharge and brought peace to his heart. Balance between work and relaxation is essential to a fulfilled life. 5. Don't let worries about the future steal the beauty of the present. As the elderly woman said, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. This means that instead of worrying about what might happen in the future, we should focus on embracing life as it is, living in the moment, and dealing with challenges when they come. Worrying about the future only robs us of peace and joy in the present. Blank. In conclusion, the story reminds us that happiness is not a fixed goal to achieve, but a journey we experience in every moment of our lives. Rather than worrying about the future or racing against time, we should learn to live fully in the present, enjoy each step, and understand that success is not in the destination, but in the journey.